This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, where we celebrate the role players and the underdogs in sports. And it probably comes as no surprise to you that our episode for today is going to be about the Field of Dreams baseball game that took place last Thursday over at the movie site in Dyersville, Iowa. Unfortunately, I was not able to make it to the game this year. Last year, of course, my brother Neil and I, we went over there, had one of the greatest nights of our life over at the Field of Dreams. It was such an awesome game last year between the Yankees and the White Sox. This year, the Cubs and the Reds came to Dyersville, Iowa, and they had what was a really special night of baseball on Thursday as well. Since I was not able to make it over to the game this year, I thought we had to at least have a Moonlight Graham Show correspondent on site that night. And so our good friend Nick Collison filled that role. Nick Collison, of course, was one of the very first Moonlighters we had here on the podcast. I remember when we started up the Moonlight Graham Show in the very beginning, we thought, man, it'd be fun to create a podcast around the role players and the underdogs in sports. Guys like Nick Collison, who came out of small town Iowa and ended up having a long, successful role player career in the NBA where he's very highly thought of. And we ended up having Nick on the podcast during our second season. I think he was like episode 27 or 28 of the podcast. So it's been, 250 plus episodes since he's been back on. We had to bring him back into the fold. He reached out to me a couple of days before the Field of Dreams games to let me know he was going to be on site. He asked for any bits of advice that I could give him, things to check out, when he should leave, what the traffic was like, all of those things ahead of time. And he went over with his dad, Dave Collison, to the game. And so since Neil and I weren't able to be on site this year, I thought what better way to hear about the Field of Dreams experience than to hear it from Nick, who hadn't been to the Field of Dreams in a number of years, but was there with his dad. And this was a perfect opportunity to bring Nick back onto the podcast. And if you like what we're doing here on the Moonlight Graham Show, make sure to subscribe to our podcast wherever it is that you get your pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show. We would love it if you left us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media and support our sponsor, The People's Company, Matt Adams and Andrew Zomer over at peoplescompany.com. If you guys are looking to build your own Field of Dreams, you need a plot of farmland to do it, call Matt Adams and Andrew Zomer over at The People's Company and enjoy today's episode on the Field of Dreams game with Nick Collison. Moonlighters, are you or someone you know moving down to Kansas City? Well, if you are, the one realtor that we trust and that you need to be calling is the great Brian Sandvig. As you well know, Brian Sandvig is our producer here on the podcast, and there is not a better residential real estate advisor down in the Kansas City marketplace than Brian Sandvig. Call Brian Sandvig, shoot him a text. Hey, DM us on social media. We'll get you connected with Brian if you can't find him on all the socials, but he is there and he is active, and he is your Kansas City realtor, so give him a call. All right, Nick Collison, welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show. Nick, it's been a few years. It's good to have you back.
Yeah, it has. Good to be here.
What was it like being a Moonlight Graham Show correspondent at the Field of Dreams yesterday?
We had a great time. It's a really good event. I'm glad I had talked to you earlier for you to be my consultant on the trip because I know you went last year, and I was very naive. I thought we could just roll in there an hour early like any game, and you set me straight and realized I had to go much early with the traffic, things like that. But we had a good time. We got there early enough to play catch at the movie site and kind of hang out and watch batting practice. We did the whole thing. It was fun.
So going back to last year's game, where were you for the first ever game at the Field of Dreams, and why did you not go last year?
I think I just assumed tickets would be impossible. I can't remember exactly what I was doing. I watched it on TV. I remember thinking, it'd be fun to go, and I need to try to figure it out for next year. So I guess I just didn't prepare enough for it. But saw the game last year, and it was just beautiful on TV. It just looks so cool when the sun goes down, and the game was obviously awesome last year. So just did a little bit of research and got tickets. Just went on StubHub and paid an arm and a leg for him, but it was worth it for sure.
Was your dad the first call? Like, did he call you after last year's game and say, "Hey, Nick, we got to go to this thing," or was it you that reached out to him and was like, "Dad, did you see that? That's got to be us next year."
We didn't really talk that much about it. We talked about the game, but I decided I was just going to do it and surprise him with it, and he was pretty surprised and was pretty excited about it. I was happy to go. But we both talked about how cool it was and what a cool idea it was, and we both loved the movie. And we both we're not as into baseball as you probably are. We haven't been watching as much. And the game was so cool. It was just such a good event by Major League Baseball. I think that brought a lot of people into it and it generated a lot of excitement, and it seemed like everybody that was at the game was just so happy to be there and just kind of like, how cool is this? Everybody really seemed to be, appreciative of being able to be there.
So when you texted me a couple of days beforehand, I was telling you about the traffic because I was a little bit surprised by it last year. I thought I was going to be there in plenty of time. What was the traffic like this year, and how early were you able to get to the park?
It started to be backed up. I mean, we planned on getting there right when I think the park opened at 3, parking was at 2, and we tried to, we went if there was no traffic to be there at 3. And then whatever happened. And I think we were sitting in traffic for about 40 minutes. So it was really early in the day and pretty crazy to still have it at that point, but it wasn't too bad. I think because we're so early, I don't know what it was like later, but it doesn't seem like they've solved all the traffic problems. But I think that's just limited in what you can do, obviously, because it's a baseball field in the cornfield and it's not used to getting 8,000 people in there for the games. But it was good. If you had left in plenty of time, it was fine, and it was kind of fun part of it too, just to start getting excited about the game.
You said you played catch in the outfield. How's your arm?
My arm's okay. It feels a little bit. I had surgery, almost my rookie year in the NBA, and ever since then, it doesn't quite whip in the same way. Not that I had a lot of velocity before, but didn't throw much after that once I started playing basketball all the time, as much as I did as a kid. But once I get loose, I could throw it a little bit, and Dad could still throw. So, we couldn't let it rip too much because there's so many people around. But we were out there quite a while, and we had a good time with it.
Was there a different world where Michael Collison is like a 6'11", 6'10" closer in the major leagues, like a John Roush? Obviously you made it to the NBA. Michael was a good college basketball player in his own right, but I just feel like he's zany enough to be a bullpen guy, and he could have been like a closer in the major leagues if he chose a different route.
I think he would have. I think closer is the right move. He would have loved all that attention running in from the center field to come in. I had his own song. He definitely would have loved that. I think if he would have grown up and a little differently like I did, where I was around Dad coaching all the time, coaching baseball all the time, he might have got into it. But, you and I were bat boys together. He didn't really have that experience, so he never quite got into baseball.
That's true. If Michael was alive for the 1993 St. Edmund State baseball team, he's probably in a bullpen at, 32 years old right now in the major leagues. It's just life didn't work out that way for him.
That's right. It would have been in his blood for sure.
So when I was at the Field of Dreams last year, I was kind of blown away by how accessible everybody was. I remember I got a picture with Hal Steinbrenner last year, and there was it was like everywhere I looked, it was Big Papi and A-Rod and Jim Tomei. And I saw this year, there was tons of ex-Cubs and Reds players around. What was it like, whether it was on the movie site or at the field itself, with just kind of like the who's who environment that the Field of Dreams draws?
Yeah, I think the intro is really cool. I don't know how it went over on TV, but it was really cool to me to see all those guys all in one place and to have them all come to Iowa and it's not the middle of nowhere to us, but to other people it is, I guess. To get all those people to come there for the game is pretty cool. We saw A-Rod and Ortiz right down in front of us, and the guy, I should know his name, but the character who was in the movie who didn't believe any of it, we saw that guy. What's his name? Do you know his name?
Timothy Busfield. Timothy Busfield.
Yeah, he was there sitting on the bleachers, taking pictures with people. He seemed to be having a good time. I just think it's like everybody seems very appreciative of it and knows how cool it is, and everybody is just enjoying being there, and nobody's too cool, I guess, in that environment. So it's just a really well done thing. I was really impressed by it.
Last year was really heavy. Like, it was the first ever event. Cosner was there. They were really leaning into like the emotional aspects of Field of Dreams. I remember I was crying. I cried a couple of different times last year. This year didn't seem as emotional, but then again, I wasn't there. Was there points last night where like just the reminiscing about the movie and the way that they do the music and the way they lean into the father-son stuff, did you get emotional at all?
They had a really good intro movie or video as well, and there was a couple times. I don't know. I'm a sucker for nostalgia a little bit, not as much as you are. I don't think that seems to be you're really into nostalgia, especially around this type of stuff. But I am myself, and the father-son thing always gets me. I'm fortunate enough to have a great relationship with my dad, and yeah, I did a little bit, and it might not have been the same because last year was the first one, and you won't be able to recreate that. But yeah, it was really well done, and I feel like it's a corporate event for sure. It is what it is. Baseball, pro baseball is a business, but they seem to have done a good job of appreciating what it means to people and allowing it to still have a heart to it. And I don't know. I was just really impressed with it. Played basketball a long time and was involved in a lot of these NBA things and big games and big productions. But this has got, like I said, a kind of a special heart to it. It's really nice.
Is there an NBA equivalent of this? They were talking about that a little on the broadcast last night. It's hard to replicate something like this in another sport. Is there anything like could the NBA do a game at Rucker that's similar to this or not?
I mean, just because of the weather, I don't think you could. But they've done like the TBT at Rucker, and I think might be cool to have like a USA basketball event or something there in the summer. But I had the thought if you could do like a white men can't jump game at Venice Beach, Lakers versus Clippers or something. I don't know if you could. I don't know if that movie's iconic enough, but it's a pretty great basketball movie, sports movie. That was the one I thought of, where you can maybe get good enough weather to do a day game there. I don't know. That was my idea. I don't know if it would fly with the NBA, if they would be excited about it or not. But that was the best I could come up with.
Yeah. How did the Harry Carey thing go over in the stadium? It was a little bit weird on TV.
I don't know. I think it was a big swing, and I don't know. I think it was cool. I think the sound of him singing was cool. Like that brought back a lot of memories for people. The hologram of it all was like, it looked a little strange, but I don't know. It was fine. It was fine to me.
Yeah, I didn't mind it. Like, you got to imagine if they're doing this, they're just running it back from last year. They got to try a few things, whether it's the placards or Harry Carey or whatever it might be. You can't just replicate everything that you had last year. So I was okay with it. But, Twitter's always looking for something to argue about.
Sure.
What about
Go ahead.
Well, go ahead. Sorry, Nick.
No, I just said I don't know what the right thing. Like, I don't know how you come with the perfect seventh inning stretch singer or what, but I think it was worth a shot. And I don't know. Especially with the Cubs, that's pretty. Harry's singing that is iconic. The most iconic seventh inning stretch person to sing that would be him. So I don't know. I thought it was okay. And people always get upset they find a way to be upset about something, but
right.
I co-signed that it was fine, I guess.
Nick Collison co-signs it. I like it. What about you walking around the Field of Dreams? Like last year, it was like full of Iowa famous people everywhere. I ran into like 15 different people we've had on the podcast, and it was just really fun. Is it one of those events where you're still very recognizable in the state because you're 6'9", 6'10", and are people coming up to you for autographs, or were you able to have just kind of a nice night on your own with your dad?
Oh, no, I had a nice night. There was a couple people that recognized me from basketball and was able to just have conversations with them. But, I might not be as famous as you think. I can kind of operate in the world pretty easily. And being tall, I guess maybe I stick out. But no, I mean, I was mostly just there with Dad and having a good time. And I enjoyed talking to people when they do recognize me and want to talk about basketball. Like, I really enjoy that now. There was a time in my life when I was younger and I didn't know how to handle it as well. I guess I'd be a little bit anxious, feeling like people were watching me and things like that. But now in my older age, I've learned to just really appreciate it. And it just means people are, excited about what you were doing, I guess, as a player in the past, and they want to come talk to you. That's a good thing. So there's only a few people, but for the most part, it was just Dad and I having a good time.
That's awesome. Now, you've thrown out the first pitch, I know, at a Royals game before. Did you ever do a Mariners game when you were out in Seattle?
Yeah, I did one Mariners game and one Royals game. I bounced it in Seattle. It was the second one. I think I got a little cocky. The Kansas City one, I threw in the back a lot because I didn't want to screw it up. And then the Mariners one, I was like, oh, I got this because I've done it before, and I bounced it. But I feel like I threw a strike in Kansas City.
If you do that again, like, what's your advice? Like, if somebody out there listening is going to throw the first pitch out, what's the advice?
Mm-hmm. I think you got to try to, if they'll allow you to throw a couple before, do it. And then I think you have to wind up and really try to let it rip and throw it hard. I think you start to screw up if you try to lob it or toss it. It might really sail on you. So I think if you're out there, you got to let it rip and try to bring as much heat as you got. I did Kansas City. I threw it about as hard as I could. And then I think I got a little bit casual in Seattle, and then sure thing, it went straight into the ground. So I think just let it rip. The mound's pretty high, so it's a little bit different. But
yeah, you're on the mound, right? Like, you're not going in front of the
mound. I was. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you got to go on the mound unless they somehow tell you not to. But yeah, for sure. And you got to go full windup. It might be kind of fun to go from the stretch, I guess. That would be different. That would let people know that you know what you're doing a little bit. But I went full windup.
Michael would go from the stretch because he's a reliever. You go from the stretch because you're a star, or from the windup because you're a starter.
Michael would go from the stretch. He would step off the rubber, call timeout, because he'd want more time out there. And he'd really want to build the suspense. That's what he would do.
Nice. Well, last question I got for you, Nick, is we did a podcast with Jack Brownlee and Sean O'Hare about a year ago about the best high school basketball teams ever in the state of Iowa. And the debate eventually boiled down to Iowa Falls or Ames. So where do you stand on the Harrison Barnes versus Nick Collison, Ames versus Iowa Falls competition?
I mean, I'm just going to say Iowa Falls. Of course, I'm going to say Iowa Falls. But I play with Doug in Oklahoma City, and I'd ask him what it was like to play on the second best team in Iowa history. But I think the reality is that they might have got us. They're pretty good, and they're pretty deep. And I just think basketball has evolved so much. And even then, 10 years later than we played, all those guys probably played a lot more basketball than our guys did in the off season, stuff like that. So I'm going to say Iowa Falls, but if I was really betting on it, I might go otherwise, but we'll keep that between me and God, I guess. But it would be tough to beat those guys. Listeners. Yeah, basically. But it's a pretty incredible team they had. The Iowas, that's one thing I'll say though, is like with the rise of so many more kids playing AAU basketball, I feel like the state has gotten a lot better than back then when we played. There's just so many kids that are playing all year round, and the talent in Iowa is pretty good, I think, per capita compared to the rest of the country.
I think so too. Yeah, we've continued to hold our ground and have a lot of D1 and I mean really NBA type talent coming out of the state, which is pretty cool. So I guess Nick, I do have one last question. So while you're at the Field of Dreams game last night, the sun is setting. It looked like another perfect Iowa sunset. When's the last time you saw a sunset that pretty over the state of Iowa?
I mean, never. I mean, like just that setting with the field and everything, it's the best. It's there's the moon, full moon. It was like, I don't know, it was beautiful. And the moon, like where we sat left field, it was right over the house. I think they showed the moon on TV, and it's just really cool. I was blown away by it. Really impressive event, just done really well. I feel like they nailed it. I'm sure the first year was amazing to be there in person, but they probably even tightened a few things up, and it was fun. Highly recommend anybody go if they are able to get tickets in the future.
Yeah, hopefully, they're taking next year's off to do a little development on the site there, but hopefully it'll be back in 2024 and I will have more Major League Baseball games in its future. So Nick, thank you so much. It's awesome to catch up with you. Appreciate you coming back on the pod. Best of luck with the Thunder this coming year and everything else you got going on in your life.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tim. Good to hear from you.
And if you're wondering what I thought of the Field of Dreams game, it was a much different experience being in the stadium last year than it was watching on TV. Both of the experiences were awesome. I thought the TV coverage, the views that Fox gets with the drones and the corn, it was awesome. I mean, the way that they showed the sunset and the moon over first base, it was perfect. It looked like Iowa, and it looked like the best version of Iowa. Now, the one thing I will say that was totally different, I would love to talk to folks that were there this year, is last year when I was there, it felt very emotional. It felt very heavy-handed. They were leaning into the emotional side of the father-son stuff, Ray Kinsella, Kevin Costner, all this stuff. I know I was not alone when I was crying at the ballpark last year, and I wonder if there was any of that this year, or if it was more like we've seen this before. It's still a really, really cool setting, but it's not quite the emotionally driven storyline as it was last year. I don't know. It's different watching it on TV than it is being there. But overall, I would say that the Field of Dreams game in year 2 was another smashing success. I hope that Major League Baseball continues to come back to the Field of Dreams year after year. I know they're not going to be there next year because of all the development that's going to be taking place. I tweeted out that I'm going to miss the aerial footage that they have because the footprint of these 2 baseball fields nestled in the corn seems just perfect the way that it is now. And it's going to look a lot different when you have a whole complex there. But that's a whole nother conversation. I thought the production was fantastic. The game was awesome. And I hope that Iowa can continue to host this game in 2025, in 2026, and 2027. I hope that's the case. So I did cry. Not during the game, but if you guys watched the Fox telecast, they had like their own Moonlight Graham guy before the game, and this guy's name was Roy Gleason. And I'm not sure if you saw this story, but if you haven't, find it on the internet because it was an awesome story. You need to watch this. Roy Gleason was a Major League Baseball player for the Dodgers back in 1963, and he was a young kid that got called up late in September to help the Dodgers out, mostly as a pinch runner. He was an outfielder, but he did get one at bat. So unlike Moonlight Graham, who never got an at bat, Roy Gleason got one at bat in a game September 28th of 1963 in the 8th inning against the Phillies. He came up to the plate and he laced a double that scored a couple of guys. He eventually scored a run as well. The Dodgers went on to win the World Series that year, and he got a World Series ring. Well, shortly after that, Vietnam happened, and Roy was drafted into Vietnam. Or actually, that happened in 1967. But after 63, Roy got sent back down to the minors, and he never appeared back in the major leagues until Vietnam happened, and he got drafted to go to Vietnam in 1967. And so while he was in Vietnam, he wore his Dodger ring, or I'm not sure if he wore it, but he had his Dodger World Series ring with him at all times. It was like one of the ways that kept him grounded back to home while he was over in Nam. And while he was there, a bunch of folks from his infantry actually were killed in battle. He ended up being wounded in battle. He had you got to watch this story. It's incredible. And you see the emotion on his face, not about the baseball side of it, but what it was like being at war and losing people in his infantry. Anyways, during all of that's happening over in Vietnam, he loses his World Series ring. So fast forward 40 years later, actually like 35 years later in the early 2000s, the Dodgers bring Roy Gleason back to throw out the first pitch to honor him because he ended up winning a Purple Heart. Winning is not the right term, but he was awarded the Purple Heart. So he's, I think, the only baseball player ever to have both a World Series ring and the Purple Heart. And at that day, when he threw out the first pitch, he throws the first pitch out and he thinks that's going to be it. And then Vin Scully on the microphone says, "Roy, we got one more surprise for you." And they bring out, and I'm getting a little bit emotional as I'm talking about it, they bring out a new World Series ring for him from that 1963 year. And you could just see the emotion on the guy's face, how much that meant to him. Not only just how cool it was to have another ring, but it brought back the memories of Vietnam and his buddies that he had lost over there as well. And that's what made me cry the night of the Field of Dreams game. But curious to hear your guys' thoughts as well. I'm sure a lot of you went to the game. I'm sure a lot of you watched it on TV. I'm sure I hope some of you played catch with your sons, played catch with your dads while that game was going on. I hope so. If you did, let us know about it. We'd love to hear about it as well. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast, for supporting us. So much great support over these past couple of weeks as the Field of Dreams game was coming up. So really do appreciate all you guys do to help support this pod. Thank you to the team here at the Moonlight Graham Show, my brothers Andy and Neil, Brian Samvig, Brendan Gargano, Tom Griffin. It's the best team in the business. Thank you to the Moonlighters as well. Have a great week, guys. And, it doesn't have to be Field of Dreams week to play catch with your son or to play catch with your dad. So as a reminder, summer's not over yet. Grab a glove, grab a ball, play some catch. Have a great week.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.